From Einmalines Productions, this is Singletrack, episode 298, presented by Electric Cable Car. Here's what's happening at Electric Cable Car. New podcasts have been launched with the focus on the business side of our trail running world. Both Dylan Bowman's Second Nature and Mylan Stone's Trail Business Club, this one's in French, have launched this past week. We have results from Chianti Ultra Trail, Chuckanut 50, and of course collected some links about the incredible Barkley finish we all got to experience. Singletrack is now on YouTube, still only audio, but if you love podcasts on YouTube, the show is there now. And finally, Singletrack just ahead of our 300th episode, and for our 6th anniversary got a new, somewhat new, updated cover art. As it is tradition now, hope you like it. Ever so slightly tweaked the design yet again. Alright, the Trail Running Film Festival is in full swing across the country and hey, beyond too. Last Sunday we had 400 people show up in Seattle for an incredible evening hosted by Brooks Trailhead, the Brooks flagship store in Seattle. The Brooks Trail team was present and several of the filmmakers. This coming week I'm heading up to Vancouver, BC, our first international show, and we'll join Adam Lee and his team at the Rio Theater. Check out trailfilmfest.com and find a screening near you and get your tickets. Contact me if you're interested in hosting us. And yes, for folks who really cannot make it in person, we'll have an online watch party in early June. Stay tuned for info on that. Chrissi Faber is from Germany, who's been living now for over a decade in New Zealand. She's a trail runner among many things and has run Tarawera Ultra Trail several times and all the different distances. In the 2024 edition, she came in third in the Miler, as their 100 miler is called. We chat about many things. Her race, the event, the experience of running an event pre-UTMB and post-UTMB takeover, and the challenges and expectations that come with it. One quick word before we dive into this. Chrissi mentioned that her third place qualified her for the UTMB Mont Blanc in 2025. I didn't know and checked in with UTMB press office about that. And yes, the wording on the website makes this actually quite clear. If you place in the top 3 or top 10, if it's a major, you qualify for the finals the following year, not the coming finals. So all races before December 31st qualify for the coming year, and the races that are happening right now in 2024 will qualify you for the finals in 2025. Again, that's for folks who qualify directly via placement in the top 3 or top 10. I didn't know that. Asked, got some replies, and got this all sorted out. Anyway, you'll hear this in the segment in the show. All right, that's all the admin work we gotta do here. Let's chat with Chrissi. We are back on Singletrack, and I have with me Chrissi Faber, a German who lives in New Zealand. Chrissi, welcome to Singletrack.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you are on the show because, you did something amazing. You came in third at Tarawera, the 100 miler. Congrats. It's been a few weeks, but officially congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been a few weeks and we sort of need to scroll back. And before we get into the race and everything else, let's talk about you. Chrissi, you're from Germany. What brings you down to New Zealand?
I just went to do a year of work and travel after school, and I think it's 11, 12 years now, and I'm still here.
That's amazing.
Did the travel, did a little bit of work, and then ended up actually studying and getting into full-time work and, setting up a life in New Zealand.
That's absolutely amazing. Where in Germany are you from?
I'm from Sauerland, so central region, a lot of forests, a lot of hills, a lot of lakes and rivers. So
I like it. Very cool. So New Zealand is very far away. How often do you get back? I feel that living on the West Coast, when I initially set out with this idea of I'm going to live in a different country, I thought that traveling back would be more doable than it actually ends up being. For me, it's very hard to go back. How often are you able to get back home?
Not quite once a year, but
okay.
So still fairly regular. But it is made easier by the fact that, my whole family is still there. So other than the flights, I don't have to organize or worry about anything.
So, what attracts you to New Zealand, aside from the fact that everyone loves New Zealand? I mean, what you personally, I mean, if you would ask the average person, they would say, yeah, New Zealand is the number one place to travel to. You made it happen. What is it for you?
It's a hard one to answer because I didn't choose to come to New Zealand and settle down here. It was more things happened. I love being here. I got my job, got my degree, and bought a house, did all that, and I'm happy being here. I think the main thing is just the fact things are a little bit more relaxed, and there's a lot more opportunities if you want them. So compared
Hey.
to Germany, yes, I've got a bachelor degree, but I could do my job without it if I worked hard and worked my way up. So the position I'm in now, it's quite a high position. And yes, in Europe, you probably have to have a bachelor degree at least to get there.
Hmm.
But in New Zealand, you could have worked your way into it.
Hmm.
And things in general, even in business, are a lot more relaxed. So we export apples and, we do deal with customers in the UK and Europe. And I do have to chuckle when we get emails and, there's a big disclaimer at the bottom and the formal address and everything in there. In New Zealand, it's just like, yeah, first name, hey mate, how's it going?
I like that. Just from a very practical point of view, how easy was it to settle in New Zealand from like permits and residency and stuff like that?
Again, the way I did it wasn't too hard. So first up, it was the work and travel visa, which is 1 year if you're under 30 or 35 or something. So that's easy to get. Then it was a study visa. Again, as long as you're happy to pay the money, they're happy to hand it out. There's a few conditions on that, but nothing too strict. And after I finished my study, I got lucky because I've got a New Zealand partner. So he kind of became my de facto partner and not sponsored me, but we had to prove we're in a loving and stable relationship, or however they word it. But you don't have to be married or anything. You just
Okay.
have to basically provide proof that you are actually living together and that it's a stable relationship. You have shared bills, shared address, all that stuff. So through that, it actually wasn't too impossible to get residency. And I think the big thing in New Zealand is that you've got a caseworker that looks at your application. And again, I had the relationship, I had a degree I attained in New Zealand, I had a fairly decent entry level job. So I think it's just everything coming together. I did have my work and travel visa. I had, I think, 3 years of student visas without any issues. So I think it's just a whole lot of things playing into it.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think if you wanted to come to New Zealand, getting a work visa is possible. Residency, if you base it on your workplace, is a lot harder.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, well, you did it right. You did it at a young age and you sort of just kind of slid in, right? And by sliding in, I don't mean that in a like sneaky way, but you sort of build yourself up in that way. So you call New Zealand home now. You see that you're permanent place. I mean, you said you bought a house. I mean, do you ever feel like wanting to move back? Those are very personal questions, personal to you, but also personal from my perspective, because I've lived here in the US now for 20, for almost 4 years now, right? And every now and then you look across the pond, you're like, should I? What would have been?
Um, it's a hard one to answer. At the moment, I'm happy here, so I'm not looking at moving again. But if that changed, my circumstances changed, I could see myself go back at some point. And again, I think that's where New Zealand being so casual helps. Like buying the house, we had to have, we went and viewed it, had a 15-minute meeting with the bank, got our loan approved, went to sign the paperwork at the lawyer, moved in 3 weeks later. So it's compared to the German bureaucracy, it's very straightforward. So yeah, I got a house here, but I could sell it. Like, if I really wanted to, I could disestablish my life, move back home. And like I said, my friends and family are still there. So I've got something to go home to.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
still call it home. I call both places home. So I
Yeah.
think to sum it up, as long as I'm happy here and I'm going to stay in New Zealand. But I'm not the kind of person that says, I've shut the door in Germany, I'll never go back. It's a horrible place. Like,
Yeah.
I could happily go back.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
I love, yeah, maybe, right? I love how you living down there have so perfectly adopted that relaxedness that you have found in New Zealand. You yourself talk about your life's decisions in a very relaxed way, right? I mean, for me as a German, I know where Germans come from, and living here in the US, I mean, I feel like I'm a lot more intense about stuff, right? And you're just like, it's easy. I mean, not everyone is intense like that, but certainly me and my environment and the people I'm around.
I think it's also doing ultra running, doing the work I'm in, and all that stuff. Things aren't easy, but if you want them, you can get there. I think that's why I'm so relaxed. Yes, having to sell the house and, packing up my belongings and moving back and leaving what I've got here. It's not going to be an easy process, but it's something that you can work through. And I
Yeah.
think that's in general my whole attitude towards things. It's like everything can be done, and there's no point wasting my energy on worrying because I know it's going to be a lot of hard work and using up a lot of energy to actually make things happen. So I think that's why I come across as quite relaxed. I know it's not easy. I
Mhm.
know it's not going to be an easy decision, but once I make the decision, I'm willing to put the hard work in. And I think that's all through life and everything I do. That's the difference I got. And that's
Well,
probably why I come across as quite relaxed and can be relaxed about things, because I also got that willingness to then, once I make a decision, it's 100%. So, just putting it in perspective with my life at the moment, I think I've done, 14-hour days for the last 10 days, just, because not because I wanted to, but just the season at work, and I do teach gym classes outside work. So just, with things coming up, I had 10 days of really, really long, intense days. It wasn't easy,
mhm.
but, it's what I want. So make it happen.
I like it. I like it. You already perfectly transitioned. So, so how did you find ultra running? How did you stumble upon this?
Um, by chance. So I've always done a little bit of running.
Okay.
I guess during school, it was more like alongside other sports I did. So I did jiu-jitsu and judo, a little bit of yoga, a bit of going to the gym just because, didn't know what else to do. So that's where we went as kids. And yeah, alongside that, I did do just little bits of running to keep my fitness up for that. And then probably stopped for a couple of years in between, and then started again. And to me, it's more about getting out into nature. So trail running came way before ultra running.
Okay.
And then you look at course maps and you go like, well, the 50K takes me up another peak and alongside another river and past a waterfall. Why wouldn't I do it? Why
Hmm.
would I do the 21K that takes me through the part of the forest that I've already run across
Hmm.
plenty of times before? So yeah, I think it was just starting off doing 10K, 21K trail races. So most of my running was actually on trails over here, just because they get you to better places,
Hmm.
more spectacular scenery.
Yeah. I love that perspective. I love that trail running. It's not about the distance. It's not about even sort of the records. It's about the destination. It's about taking you places, right? I
Yeah.
think it's
And
a really special thing that our sport offers, if you will.
yeah, and I think in general, anything I do, if it sounds like a bit of an adventure, sure, sign me up. So it's not just trail running. I did a road biking event for some random reason. So 100K road bike in this area, and it was just, that looks quite cool. Gets me out to a beach, gets me to explore around the place. And yeah, I think it's entering races, it's going on an adventure with a little bit of structure and support.
This is what I always say. This is the perfect way of summarizing it, right? I mean, you can do a race and you don't have to be super prepared when it comes to mapping out the route. You know you have the aid stations. You don't even have to worry about weird drops or for food and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you still have that adventure, right?
Yeah, and I think in New Zealand, so if you don't know New Zealand, yes, it's a great country. That's spectacular scenery. We have what's called DOC. So that's the government agency that looks after the environment, basically, or all the, trails and all that stuff. But land isn't public land. So coming from Germany, where between villages, yes, you have your fields, your forests, and there's tracks going through them. In New Zealand, you may have like a massive forest block, but unless DOC has built a trail through it, you can't access it. So a lot of times having a trail event just allows you to cross private land and to connect to more trails as well. So, for example, around here, there's not a lot of places where I can trail run without driving to them. And even then it's very limited to there's one or two tracks I can follow.
Okay.
And then they interlink, and that's about it. But for example, there have been local races that went to the same place. Yes, they used the track, but then they had access to farmland. So they then added another loop and then crossed the farmland again, back onto another trail. So it just gives you that opportunity as well to do a different course.
Now, this is really, really fascinating, because I think that adds a completely different dimension to the way it is then also over here in the US, because getting access to private land is super, super difficult just because of the insurance and permitting structure. But we do have quite a bit of access in public lands. And so we can string certain events together, but then we also have limitations because you have to work with agencies and whatever. But to have races that you want to sign up because that opens up access to different routes and different ways of connecting, because it connects these private public partnerships. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, so one example is Lake Taupo got a massive mountain bike track around it, but it's broken into different sections, and between those sections you're supposed to book a boat shuttle. So the trail run opens up farmland, so you can start at one end of the lake and run halfway around it without, having to use the boat shuttle. So you can just start running, and at some point it takes you across the farmland, across some private roads, and then you go back onto the actual trail again. So just things like that. It just, one-off opportunity. So why not do it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you've run Tarawera a few times. Before we dive into your actual racing there, give us a little bit of an overview of what is Tarawera, what makes it special. Before Tarawera became an official UTMB race, they've always partnered with UTMB on that World Ultra Trail circuit thing. Give us a little bit of an overview. What is Tarawera as a race, and what makes it special?
So Tarawera was started by Paul Chartres, who is a local to the area. And he basically had that vision of connecting all the amazing trails, all the lakes in the area, and create one race around it. So you've got Rotorua, Lake Rotorua, kind of as your main hub or main center. Paul himself, I hope I'm getting this right, is from Kawerau, which is a good half an hour, 45-minute drive away from Rotorua. And I think he just wanted to promote the whole region, the whole area, and just show people how special the place is, how special all the lakes are, how special the landscape is. And also some of the trails are old warrior trails from the local tribes. So it's a bit of a connection to just the land and the people, really. That's how the race started, and he came up with this vision for the race. Started off with shorter distances before he actually got the miler going. So the race just kind of grew over time. Don't quote me on how many started it, but, it was something like 20, 30 people or something for the first year, and it just got bigger and bigger from there. And because he is a local and he is so proud of the region and the people, that just shows in the whole event and how it had been designed. And one thing people say about Tarawera, they rave about the landscapes and the volunteers. So you have a lot of local community groups that set up the aid stations. And it's a special place.
I mean, I think it requires looking at it and perhaps jumping a little bit ahead too. I think it requires somebody local, probably also from a practical point of view, to even get the permits, right? Especially if it's a combination of a public and private partnership, right? You will at some point probably need to talk to a farmer. And if you're not just a corporation, but an individual lives down the street, then you might get a yes easier, right? But it's also about the vision for a place, right? Because it's not just we need to get to 100 miles. It's not just about hitting a specific distance. You need to understand what this place is and how to connect it practically and also from a story point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me personally, I've been to Rotorua before. It's just an amazing place. So like I said, you've got the lakes, you've got the native bush. In Rotorua itself, you've got Tarawera River Forest, which is a mix of redwoods as well as local bush. And it's just a stunning place to run at. And unlike a lot of other parts of New Zealand, you actually have the forest open to the public and a network of trails going through it. So it's designed for hikers, mountain bikers, runners. So it's basically a huge open forest connecting different lakes, and people can just go and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's amazing. How many times have you participated in that event?
So I did the 21K, 50K, 100K, and the miler 3 times.
Okay. Did you
So
work
when I
yourself? Did you work yourself up in distance?
yes.
Nice.
So the 21K was actually, so you had 2 races, both organized by the same people, but at separate times of the year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was called Tiki Tapu, which is the name of one of the lakes, instead of Tarawera. So that's where I did the 21K. Went back and did the 50K again. It just looked bigger on the map. And then, worked my way up to the 100K. I mean, that's kind of, Tarawera progressed alongside my trail running or running in general. So the reason why I stepped up in distance is just because I kept running, got fitter, got ready to take on the distances.
I mean, amazing. Let's talk a little bit about how. Do I want to talk about? No, let's talk a little bit about your race this year. I think that's where I want to go next. You ran the 100-miler. You said the 3rd time you ran it?
3rd time, yep.
Yeah. In our conversation we've had a couple of weeks ago, you said that the routes did change a little bit. Is that every year? Is that due to course design or permitting, or how does this evolve?
So they do have their 100-mile course, which is basically set. However, last year there was a big weather event just before the race. So they basically couldn't use the normal route simply because of landslides and tracks being closed. And the year before, they already had one part alongside a lake where they had to do a boat shuttle just because of a landslide. So the trail had disappeared, but it was 100 meters out from one of their bigger aid stations. So you basically jumped on a boat. It took you to the aid station and you continued from there. Amazing. And then, the next year there had been more rain, more thunderstorms. So another part of the trail washed out literally 2 or 3 weeks before the race. So they made the last minute decision to change the race. So you ran in from one lake into Rotorua itself, and then you had 2 loop tracks of around 60K. So that was kind of a bit of a, can't change the weather, can't do anything about it. But it was a bummer because it took you away from the more remote spots of the course, simply because you just couldn't get there. And then the 2 laps you did were through the part of the forest that is accessible to the public as well, most of it. So it just took away that little concept of being on a journey and just working your way through the region. The main reason I entered again was simply to go on that full journey, to not run. I mean, 2 laps of 60K, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't like you just felt like you were doing the same stuff again and again. Yeah. But it was just wanting that whole journey and following the whole course. And then, yeah, again, due to weather and trails not being repaired in time, it again ended up being a slightly different course to the original course this year. But it was, there were no laps in it. So it was still a journey through the land.
So Tarawera is explain a little bit weather and season, because you are down under, so this is summertime for you. What's the normal time? Like, how do you describe this for us people here on the Northern Hemisphere? We can't really picture what this looks like.
So it's at the end of New Zealand summer.
Okay.
So January is generally the hottest or middle of summer. February can already be a little bit cooler, but it still gets super hot during the day. And in New Zealand, the big difference is that the sun is super strong. So if it's a 25-degree day and you're in the sun, it feels like 35 and you just get burned within half an hour. So I think that's the intensity of New Zealand summer. It's just different to Europe. So, I actually, sounds weird, but I miss European summers where you can sit outside on a 25-degree day and not burn to a crisp. In New Zealand, you just couldn't do it. But it's just too risky in terms of skin cancer, but also just the sun beating down on you. It's a different feeling. But yeah, so Tarawera, February, it's already a little bit cooler. And based on the trails, a lot of it is in the bush or the forest. So you're not as exposed as in other parts of the country.
Okay.
And I think, this year was a hot year. So it did get up to 29, 30 degrees during the day. But there have been years where it was like 15 degrees and raining.
Yeah. So your summer then isn't, especially when you talk about course changes due to landslides and stuff, right? You are still getting rain then. So it's not like in some areas where summer means no precipitation for weeks at a time or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, those were exceptional events. So they were actually big cyclones coming over from the tropics. So generally summers are dry over here, but we do get the exceptions. It's an island at the end of the day, so the weather can change.
Yeah. No, I think for somebody who's never been in New Zealand, I think it's a good way of sort of framing the place and the time when this race happened. So let's talk about your race. I mean, you came in third. Amazing, right? You're clearly familiar with the event. You're clearly familiar with the region. You didn't have to travel in from very far. These are all things that are bonuses for you. But when you went in there, did you think it was possible? Where did you just go on a journey and see what would happen? You ended up realizing you're third. Like, how do you go into a race like that?
So last year, I think I ended up 7th.
Okay.
The fact that I'm not quite sure tells you how concerned I am with placing and timings. I thought top 10 could be possible again. However, this year, 2 years after COVID, the race was bigger again, more international entries. So I just didn't know at all. So in the back of my head, it was like top 10 would be nice. The course this year was more difficult than last year. So under 24 hours for a miler would be good, but who knows? I knew that part of the section, which was an out and back as well, was the hardest part. You actually had a couple of big climbs in there and very steep terrain. So again, didn't know how that would come into effect in terms of how long it would take or anything. So yeah, I went into it. I just wanted to enjoy the journey. That was my main thing. And second, top 10 would have been nice, but I wasn't too fussed about it. And then, started running, had no idea where I was. Actually, I had another competitor who was running with me, I think 15K into the race. He asked me if I was racing, and I just laughed at him. I'm like, dude, I've got 150K to go. I'm just going at a pace that feels all right. Again, knowing the local trails was probably an advantage because I knew the first 50K were forest roads or forest tracks, so very runnable, quite flat. So I was doing a mix of running fast-ish, but not too fast. It was it was quite hard to find the right pace because I did want to push the pace a little bit, but also not burn out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it wasn't until 30K from the finish that my partner told me that I was in third place. So I literally had no idea. And from then on, I was running scared.
We'll get to that part. But I mean, clearly you're a very relaxed person. You go in there from a personal journey point of view. But is it also partially due to the fact that you things spread out so much that you're not really in contact with the other runners, that you don't really know, you're not really in a place to chase someone down or being chased down because things just disappear, right?
Yeah, and I think with the 100 miles, I mean, I can only talk about races in New Zealand or the, smaller races. You just don't know. And things do spread out. I knew I was probably somewhere in the top third, but yeah, I honestly had no idea. And then at some point you got onto the same course as people doing the 100K as well. So you weren't always quite sure if the runner in front of you was doing the miler or the 100K. You generally had a good idea depending on how fast they were moving. But yeah, I suppose if you were interested, it wouldn't be too hard to keep track of it. Again, at the aid stations, the volunteers are lovely, but they're not competitive either. So it wasn't like sometimes you do a race and they go at the aid station, oh my God, you're third female or something. And these guys were just like, oh, cool, what do you want? How can we help you?
Yeah.
So just a little bit different as well. There was an app, you could track it. So like I said, if I had been interested, I could have figured it out. But
it's fascinating though that our sport still allows this sort of to happen, right? That we still sort of at the same starting lineup and then also on the same performance level, if you will, can have folks that are just like you getting up and enjoying putting a bib on and enjoying the journey. And then other people are like super intense about this and they're tracking every meter and in the end aren't that much farther ahead, right? I mean, it's not like that. The sport is set up in a way that even if you are crazy intense, you're not carving yourself out a huge advantage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I might come across as very relaxed and it's easy. It wasn't. Like, there were points where it was a slight uphill and I was just like, look, I know I can run this. Keep running. I mean, it wasn't easy. Did I want to stop and walk it? Yes. But, so there was still that element, yes, it's hard. Yes, I'm pushing. But there was, again, don't have enough energy to get upset about it or try and stick to a plan. Or just go and run by feel. And yes, that feel might be this sucks and it hurts, but it's sustainable.
Yeah.
So I think that is the difference too, where people like to say why it's slightly different, that I can deal with that whole, yes, this is uncomfortable, but I just keep going because it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's something that I can't deal with. I struggle with pain tremendously. I DNF very quickly. I can't.
Having said that, I'm not stupid either. So I've never pushed myself to the point where I thought I was just about to spew or pass out, which, I know other people do that. I couldn't. Like, I've never been in a race where I was cramping, spewing, or anything like that, because whilst I do push my body, there is a limit, and I'm not willing to go over that.
Yeah.
And 100 miles, it's not the place where you run, right on the red line or over it for the whole race.
I mean, I guess not. I mean, for some people, you'd think 100 mile is red line straight through, right? Because it is such an insane experience. Break it down a little bit more. Did you have like super low spots? Did you have times when you were questioning your sanity out there?
I think one low spot was the middle of the day, being out in the heat, and the trail or that part of the course was longer than expected. So whilst I don't trust my watch anyway, because I mean, it's always a little bit out, I use it as a little bit of guidance, at least for the distances between aid stations. And yeah, this part, the trail took a lot longer than I thought it would. It was a lot hotter than I expected it to be. And it felt like it was a couple of Ks longer than what I expected it to be. And yeah, in the midday heat, I think I ran out of water, got 2K from the aid station. I half knew the trail, so I knew I still had like quite a way to go, but it was just super hot, super intense. And at that point, I was just like, I was over it. But got to the aid station, dunked my head into water, filled up my bottles, probably drank a whole litre at the aid station itself. And then it's like, right, keep going.
Nice. In terms of, you mentioned that you were sort of preparing yourself or hoping for a 24-hour finish. Is that something, or within that range and also within the top 10? I mean, you don't know your placement as you're out on a run, but you do know sort of your times, right? You know, as you're hitting certain aid stations, how long it should have taken you. Do you keep track of that? Is it something you sort of, you're shaking your head? Not at all.
Not at all,
Yeah.
because the trails are so different. So I knew the first 50, 60K forest tracks, easy running, then still on the flat, but out in the heat. So being exposed to the elements. So that section, if it had been a colder day, you know, there would have been 10, 15Ks at that point that I would have run a little faster. And then you're hitting the trails and you never know what condition they're in. You know, there's going to be hills, there's going to be climbs. How am I feeling? So I literally went into the race with no plan at all. Like I had a rough idea at what time of the day I might be hitting the out and back section, which was the biggest and hardest section. However, in my head, I was like, yeah, probably late afternoon, getting into the dark. No, I hit it at like 4 o'clock or something. So a lot earlier than I even had in my mind. But then that part took longer than I thought it might take. So it's just, I don't know. I know people that have run it, and I know people that have spreadsheets and very good ideas of when they want to be there and what they need to take. I'm not that kind of person, because I think too, once I have a plan, I want to stick to the plan. So like I said, if it's a hot race and I can't execute the plan that I have in my head, that's just going to mess with my brain.
I mean, this is a really good way of approaching it, right? But if you make too much of a plan, then you have to deal with, if things go sideways and on a really long day, there's a chance that you can't plan everything. Then you have to deal with that disappointment or frustration of like, oh, my plan is not working, even though if you're actually looking at it, things might actually be going well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if I get to an aid station and my plan was I have 500 ml of Coke to, you know, push me back up and give me sugar, and I can't stomach it, what am I going to do? Am I going to get frustrated about it, try and force it down, or do I go like, what else is here that looks good and might go down?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the same with, I did have drop bags. I had a few things ready that I knew in other races have worked for me before. But again, it was like you get there, you go through, okay, what do I have? Is this right for the moment or not?
It requires and also a deep sense of understanding what you do need, right? Because in situations like that, especially if you're not, we as humans, we don't put ourselves into these situations very often, right? I mean, you do have to force yourself to make sure you get the right calories and stuff, right? Because if you just go by feel, well, then you would just curl up in a ball or something, right? You don't worry about calories?
Nah, I mean, my whole aim is I've got 2 flasks, one with water, one with some kind of electrolyte carb drink mix, I call it my IV drip, just to keep things dripping in. And my aim is at every aid station, grab something to eat. But how much that is and what it is, yeah. I mean,
whatever
for me,
feels right, yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I have to be quite conscious because I don't like gels. I do like solid food, but you can only stomach so much. So hence why I do have that hydration mix just to keep me topped up. And I did force down a few gels just because I knew I had to. But yeah, it's more the fact that I know I have to, not how much exactly it is that I kind of pay attention to. So yeah, the whole race, it was towards the end, it was definitely a case of stuffing things down, even if I didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
But what it was and what the exact calories and carbs were, no idea.
Amazing. And it's absolutely amazing. I listen to other podcasts and I listen to these pros and they're so dialed, right? And everybody is like, I'll take a gel every 43 minutes, right? And they know exactly what they need. And you're like, whatever. It's just whatever
Well,
floats.
I think there's a benefit to it. And maybe performance-wise, I could be better if I did follow it, but then I'd lose the enjoyment of it. And like I said, I don't want to come across as too blasé or like, yeah, calories don't matter. Trust me, if you run that far, you need to get the fuel in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to me, it's quite, again, it's a fine balance, and I definitely have some work to do there. But as long as I force myself to eat something and keep calories going in, then I'm not too worried about the detail, because just getting food down is enough of a struggle for me at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But having said that, forcing more calories into me than I have done in the past, it would have helped my performance. So it is a double-edged sword, because I know being a little bit more serious about nutrition, or maybe tracking it a bit better, could help me performance-wise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know what it would do to my enjoyment.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So let's talk about enjoyment. You said you were told by your partner in the last 30K that you were in third place. So was that a text message? Was that in person? How did you hear this? And what happened?
It was in person.
Okay.
So he was actually writing just at the side of the road outside an aid station, and he's like, hey, he said before, oh, you're doing quite well. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And then he was like, right, so yeah, no, super proud and really good place. And I'm like, he just kept looking. I'm like, what? He's like, do you want to know? I'm like, well, if you say it like that, yeah. I was kind of thinking top 10, top 5, something.
Yeah.
And when he said, oh, you're third, it's like, okay, bye, see you later. I took off. The main reason I took off was because I knew who was behind me. So because it was on the out and back section, so I did pass one girl who must have run really, really strong at the start, because by the time I passed her, she literally couldn't take on any more nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And I did make a lot of ground on her at that point in time. So I knew if she did manage to get herself out of the nutrition hole, she's a better runner than me. She'd catch me. And then I got to the aid station, and Dawn Tuffrey, who's one of the top runners for New Zealand, was standing there going like, oh, have you passed so-and-so? So I knew she was going to be the pacer for that girl. And Dawn's A, she's a machine, B, she's competitive. So I knew she would put a target on my back. So yeah, those two, knowing they were behind me, I knew they would push to get the win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with both of them, yeah, they made some mistakes along the way, I assume, getting into a hole with nutrition. One other girl who I'd passed earlier was a really good runner as well, but she had road shoes. So at that point where I passed her, she was actually struggling on the trail. I think she must have had some issues with the heat as well, because I had actually gained a lot more on her than I thought. But yeah, I knew there was at least 2 or 3 girls behind me that are better runners, but they just had issues on the day, which that's the game of it. I could have been in the same spot. But knowing there's three teams behind you, all 3 of them have paces, all 3 of them put a target on your back, and all 3 of them are highly competitive, definitely made me go, okay, 30K, let's get down to business. I was convinced one of them would get me. Because again, I didn't know how far behind they were. At the next aid station, my partner said the next girl was 20 minutes behind me at that point, or at the previous aid station. 20 minutes, 30K, it's not much. And then again, I didn't waste time checking my app or, getting constant text updates. It was literally just head down and try and put on a good fight. And I definitely ran those last 30K probably an hour faster than I would have without it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which kind of shows how my attitude can change.
Okay.
I don't think over all the race I could have been much faster, but definitely in those last 30K, when you're exhausted, I don't know if I would have pushed myself quite that hard without it. And I got to a point where probably from 25K out, where I was running at a pace that I didn't know that I could sustain. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the gamble now. I'm going to push, and I might absolutely fall over and slow right down, or I might be able to hold on. So didn't quite hold on, didn't quite fall over. It was somewhere in the middle. So I did keep the pace up for quite a while. And then I did drop down, but I never got to that stage where I was absolutely shattered. Not until I actually did make it across the finish line. But yeah, definitely, it made a difference at that point. But also running a little bit more conservative for the first part of the race probably helped that I could do that.
Did you feel like, so how did it affect your enjoyment level? Did you enjoy and appreciate, especially because you didn't have to do it for the entire race, the competitiveness, the fight? Or did you feel like now it's a fight, a war that you don't really enjoy and you have to do it? I mean, you don't have to, but there's a part of you where you want to have to.
Yeah. I mean, being third, it is so good that you want to get it. Or at least know you gave it your all. I probably enjoyed it less than the first part, but also it was at nighttime. So it's not like I really missed out on enjoying the scenery or anything. Yeah, that part of the trail, I think a little bit slower, I would have enjoyed it more, but third place is pretty cool.
It makes up for it. I like it.
Yeah.
So
no regrets there, but it was definitely, it got to the point where I was like, I just want this to be over, because right now I'm running a little scared and I'm pushing for the wrong reason. I mean, at that point, the reason was fine to me and I was happy with it, but I definitely couldn't have done that for the whole race.
Yeah. No, for sure. All right. So you come to the finish line. I mean, I've come to finish lines, but I've never in a place. Having said this, I ran 100K and it was also a really hot day. And so everyone dropped. And I also had no idea. And by the time I came in third, but I was literally third and also last. So it was a weird feeling, but you come to a finish line. I mean, how does it feel coming to a finish line at a UTMB event and coming in third?
Well, I didn't know I was third. So it was a bit of a weird one because I was running in at the same time as a lot of 100Ks.
Oh, okay.
And the guys on the microphone actually didn't, I don't know, it was weird. Like they just said like, oh yeah, and they ran in, or they announced one of the 100K people in front of me, and they're like, oh, there's Chrissi, finished the miler, but nothing else. And I was like, oh, that's a bit odd. And then my partner was like, oh, she just came third. And they're like, oh, according to the app, now we've had 3 other finishes already. And it was just a little bit, okay. And then, partner being the proud person that he is, he's like, no, she's third, celebrated. And I'm just like, honestly, right now, just whatever. Like, kind of missed the opportunity to announce it over the microphone. I'm already at the finish. It's a little bit weird because I am third and I thought I was third. But
yeah.
Just kind of like, if you want to argue for 5 minutes, I'm just going to go and get my medal and put down.
I hear you. The first time running a UTMB event was last year at Canyons, and I made it through the finish line. I didn't have anybody with me, and obviously I didn't place in any way. But I came in right during the same time when the 100K winner came in, and so there was all of this commotion around the 100K winner, and I just kind of sort of snuck in through the side, and it was like, I guess I finished too, so whatever.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit confusing. Well, you're third now. Congratulations. And we do have to talk about what the third actually does, because it's not just a third and a podium. There's a big difference between a third and a fourth, because that automatically qualifies you for Chamonix this August, which that is a big deal, more so than if you get announced on the microphone.
Yes. Disclaimer, I had no idea that was part of it.
Oh yeah,
So
amazing.
I assume the girls behind me knew it, and that's probably why they were putting that target on my back. But I honestly had no idea until I saw something after the race by UTMB going like, "Oh, top 3 are going to Chamonix." I was like, "Oh, what?" Fun story too. I saw the post, I saw the tag, people told me about it, but I didn't actually get any information or email anything from UTMB until a week later. So I was a bit like, I think I've fully qualified. And I had emails from them before that I could enter the lottery or that I
Mhm.
qualified to enter the lottery or something. So I was like, I'll just wait until they give me some more information because I have no idea. So yeah, that was a bit of a strange 10 days, 2 weeks where people are like, "Oh, you're going to Chamonix." I'm like, I don't know. I have
Maybe.
no idea. I messaged them. No one got back to me. So
Yeah.
it was really random. And then I did get the email, and because Tarawera being in February, we missed the cutoff for this year. So it's actually 2025.
Ah, okay, okay. So that part I actually didn't know. I assumed that runners who would be coming in the top for this essentially all these races between now and August would still qualify for this year.
No, because I think they announced, I've heard on a podcast, they announced the starter list just last week or the week before. Um, and I did ask them, I was like, look, probably, off chance, but is there any way I could do it this year?
Mhm.
And apparently there is some process where you can put yourself in before the cutoff so that if I'd done that, say in December or January, and then placed third, my entry would have been on the radar and in. But honestly, like I said, I'm cool. I'm going to Chamonix, but wasn't a goal or anything, and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not familiar enough with it.
No, I totally get where you're at, and I totally also hear that this process clearly needs to get refined still, both from an organization point of view. But I am fascinated. I'm fascinated in many things. I'm fascinated that they still haven't refined that. I didn't know that you wouldn't qualify for this year. That's what I assumed. And I'm
Yeah, I
also,
think if you're a competitive runner and your goal is to get Chamonix, you would have, probably wouldn't have been a complicated process and the
mhm.
information's probably all there. But because it wasn't on my radar, I never
Yeah,
even
yeah,
looked at their website. So might just be that.
yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, well, I'm my head spinning because I'm trying to understand the system, and the system is interesting because it feeds multiple different um people groups, if you will, right? There's the average people who are just average people, folks who are just trying to get through it by getting stones and doing the lottery process. And then there are folks like you who actually have the ability just by placing somewhat by accident, if you will, right? Sort of, I think, yeah, by having now, 40 plus races, I think there are lots of races where one could sort of place in that way, right? I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
how competitive Mauritius is going to be, right? I mean, it's super remote island and super expensive flights, right? But
yeah,
there's that piece, and then there are sort of the elites, right? That who do this professionally and stuff. And so there are all of these different angles to look at and how this whole thing works. Well, since we're already talking about all of this organizational structure, I do want to have this conversation around how Tarawera has changed now that it is under this ownership of UTMB. And you had given me uh, a lot of feedback when we first talked, and now that it's been a few weeks, how do you feel about this? How would you describe it? Just because I think that there is this angle where it's not about me opening a conversation just so we can bash UTMB, but there is a very delicate balance. You started off saying the Tarawera was started by a guy who lives local, who cares about his place, right? And I think there is a logical and smart way to say, how do we have a good qualification system that people who do want to run in Chamonix can sort of be part of this sort of global series and get qualification points wherever, right? I mean, I think these pieces these all make sense, but if you get some kind of mega corporation coming in and trying to sort of cookie cutter manhandle McDonald'sify everything, then it's starting to feel icky, right? And I don't know where we are on that scale. You've ran Tarawera pre UTMB, you've ran Tarawera since. The floor is yours.
First of all, I still love Tarawera just because it is special and it's really hard to explain, but everyone who you ask about that race, it usually gets a special place in their heart, which is the landscape, the journey, and the volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely love that race. But I think I'm now at a point where I run Tarawera despite UTMB. Not because of them or because I like them at all, because there has been a lot of criticism on what they've done. And to me, there's things that are just, look, it's a big corporation. There's different structures, there's different policies, whatever, get that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also little things where I'm like, that's just not cool. And whoever organized the race at a high level did not think about the people on the ground. Mm-hmm. So it started off probably 2 months out from the race. They announced a nutrition company that would provide the on-course nutrition, like the gels, the electrolyte or hydration mix, that you couldn't buy in New Zealand. So you're putting on a race that's an ultra distance where people are reliant on aid stations, and you're putting on fuel that people can't train with.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit of a no-no.
Yeah.
I mean,
they just announced this week that it's available now in Australia and New Zealand, but literally just this week, 6 weeks after the race, right?
And keeping in mind, it is summer, so people are relying on hydration mixes.
Yeah, no.
To just get them through the race. So that was the first thing. Then, yes,
which again, I think it's a good point. Sorry, I don't want to jump ahead, right? Because on paper, right, if you're a corporation and you're like, well, they're sponsoring the World Series, of course, they're going to be the nutrition provider. So in a boardroom, that seems like a reasonable contractual decision. But the realities on the ground, right, that you are showing up at the starting line and you have to rely on nutrition at the aid station that's completely unproven to you. I mean, that does throw you for a loop, right? How do you sort of make up for it? Do you just take your entire nutrition by yourself and don't use it at all? Or do you just roll the dice and hope it works for you?
Yeah, again, it's a personal decision. How much do you trust your stomach? How have you been getting along with using different brands? And to be honest, on the day itself, because it was a hot day, it actually caused further issues. So luckily they kept, so Pure Nutrition was the sponsor in previous years. They still had their gels at aid stations, but that actually wasn't officially announced and was probably kept on the quiet for a reason. But yeah, when I found out that the expo that they have pure nutrition on course, I was very well relieved. And like I said, I do like solid food, so I wasn't too worried about the gels they had. It was good to know that I could grab some more pure nutrition, which is something I've used before and I know it works. And they've got a cola flavor, which is just so good.
Amazing.
So yeah, I wasn't too worried about that. It was the electrolyte mix, especially, like I said, I'm kind of relying on that to be a drip feed into the system. So I just had, the random little plastic baggies of white powder in my vest, just so I could mix my own. What happened on the day, though, which is bringing me to another issue with the race, is because it was hot, the aid stations had a certain amount of water and electrolyte mix ready. People weren't using the electrolyte mix, so they ran low on water or out of water. And in the miler, over 100 people DNF'd. I don't know the exact stats around it or why they did it, but I'd say a hot day, not the right nutrition or the right drink mix would have probably played into it for a few athletes. A friend of mine ran the 100K, and they had one aid station set up that the 100K runners hit twice, and the 50K runners ran through it, which is a few thousand. And that aid station actually completely ran out of water. And he queued for 20 minutes, got to the front of the queue, got told there's no water left. The truck is still on his way. So he ended up running the next 15K without water.
Which, I mean, that is such a basic logistical thing that if you come in as a company who is supposed to be running not just trail races all over the world, but also Ironmans, right? I mean, the basic idea of having water at aid stations.
Yeah.
How can you ever run out of these, out of water, right? I mean, I think I've been at aid stations where you ran out watermelon, right? Where certain items are lower than others, right? But water, you should never be in a place where you run out of water.
No, and to me, it's they knew how many runners there were. They knew how many people entered those events. So I don't know how that would have happened. Yes, it was hotter than usual, but still, you'd think if you've got 5,000 runners coming through, you would have a set amount of water per runner allocated and ensure that that's available.
Yeah. And
at the end of the day, we're talking water. If they end up tipping out 200 liters at the end, who cares?
I mean, exactly. And they all see the weather forecast, right? They know that they need to overstock on water. Like I've ran a race that was unseasonably hot before, and they actually added additional aid stations in between. There were just water stops just because it was a desert race, right? And the stretches were a little longer, and they're like, we need to provide additional water stops, right? You need to account for that.
I think the miscalculation may have been that they thought, we need 1,000 liters of hydration, and 300 of that is going to be the hydration mix, which no one took. So that probably contributed to it. But again, you would think they'd have extra water, even if it's just to ensure that if people wanted to tip some over their head or drink a lot at the aid station itself, that there's a reserve. And also 100K and 50K, that's another race where people end up being spread out. So if you start to run low, if you see we're down to our last few 100 liters, raise the alarm then.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something...
To me, it's just,
something that couldn't be fixed, right?
Well, I assume they got water there at some point, but don't know. And interestingly enough, because I was looking at, once I figured out Chamonix is next year, I was looking at doing another different event at that time of the year. And I did inquire about a race in Australia that's run by UTMB. And the feedback was, yep, it's a really cool race, but people ran out of water.
Okay. I mean, I had a similar observation when I ran Canyons last year, where and then Kodiak, both UTMB races, where I felt like you would assume that one of the things that the big corporate entity sort of brings to an event is logistical expertise, right? Especially compared to the individual sort of locally family run events. They might not have the logistical expertise, but if logistical expertise is not available, especially for an organization, I mean, it seems bizarre. It seems like if they don't do that, what are they doing?
I wonder if it is because Chamonix, you do go past established aid stations, so your mountain huts or something that have their own supply. I don't know. But running out of water, it's making it quite dangerous too. And then the other thing they did was, again, only 6 to 8 weeks out from the race, they announced the change of the start line.
Yeah, so you had mentioned that.
Yeah, so from starting in Rotorua, it changed to starting in Tarawera. Like I said, it's a 30, 45-minute drive. And what happened was that they put on shuttle buses, but you had to pay for because, the race itself wasn't expensive enough. But the shuttle buses were leaving from somewhere else than the original start line. So the finish line of the race is in Rotorua town centre, and the original start line is a good 5K out of town. So people, especially overseas travelers, would have booked their accommodation close to the start line because let's be honest, a 4 a.m. start is rough at the best of times. So
Mhm.
you want to make sure you're as close to the start as possible. But now there were a few hundred comments I've seen where people are now faced with, okay, I'm out of town. I now have to organize myself to be in town, which is 5K away by 2 a.m. to get on a shuttle bus.
Mhm.
And yes, New Zealand has Uber, but very limited, and there's definitely no public transport that time of the day.
Yeah, yeah. And even if you call an Uber, that doesn't mean anybody's going to pick up at 2 a.m.,
No.
right?
And to me, it would have been an easy one to just go, okay, this is a change. We had to make it. Let's be honest, change happens.
Yeah.
However, when you book your shuttle bus to the new start line, we have two options. One is you can either get shuttled in from the finish, so from the town centre, or there's a shuttle bus running from the original start line because that's where people booked accommodation.
Mhm. Mhm. You see,
But no,
you in logistics, you think of all of these things, right? You understand that they're practical solutions, right? This is not a sort of a philosophical criticism of like, I don't like whatever, right? I mean, no, well, UTMB has seen so much, kerfuffle over the last few months about lots of things. And some of the criticisms are just philosophical, right? There are
yeah,
people, they just don't, they like racing different races, and so therefore they're slamming a race that's organized differently. But
yeah.
this is, number one, it's an actual experience. It's not hypothetical, but you're also like providing the answers right away, right? That's constructive criticism. This is something that they can easily and have to fix, right?
And I think with races of that distance, there's enough stress on people. There's a lot of people flying over from Australia to do the race. Things like that add additional stress to a day that's already hard enough. Like if
Yeah.
that's your first race, you thought you were all organized, you are a person that likes to plan things. Having things change on you that are that big do cause stress and, some uncertainties around, oh my God, how am I going to do that? And there's enough race nerves already. You shouldn't add to it. And
Mm.
to me, it's just easy things that if you actually talk to someone or listen to the feedback or follow the Facebook groups, you would have picked up on that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's it's tough. Is it a breakdown where, because the race locally is still organized by locals, right? I mean, the original, or at least some of the folks that have been managing the event for many years, they're still part of the event. It's not completely now.
No, so there's still some locals involved, but again, I don't know how much influence they have.
Mm,
And the main organization behind it, as far as I know, it's a New Zealand Australian team.
mm,
So not locals, but
mm.
from this hemisphere.
Yeah.
But I don't know the exact details. But yeah, to me, it's a little sad because, like I said, I love the event and I just love the place. But I'm now doubting whether I'll enter it again. And full disclaimer, I only entered it this year because someone else couldn't run it and I got a half price entry.
Mhm.
Because let's be honest, the price tag on the miler is close to $1,000 New Zealand. And I'm sorry, I can't justify spending that much on a race. I personally can afford it, being a local too, and I have a camper van. The additional costs around the race are very minimal for me. So there's freedom camping spots. I pay for my petrol, and that's about it. But I just personally could not justify to myself spending $1,000 on the race.
Is that a lot more expensive than locally run events of that distance?
Yes. So there's not a lot of 100 milers in New Zealand. Um, but I would say it's definitely more expensive. I couldn't
Mm.
say if it's, 30, 40% more, but it is significant.
That's super interesting, because here in the US, 100-mile events are so expensive, individually run, that they are still more expensive for most parts, especially the ones that um, are well attended. that UTMB is actually not by a long shot, not expensive. They're cheaper than the more well-known 100-mile and or big distance events, which is again is something that you would think that's something they would consider, right?
It's interesting, but yeah, for me, it's hard to say because, like I said, we don't have any other big organizations putting on 100 miles in New Zealand. I can compare to 100K races, and it's a bit more, not too far off. But for me personally, it's just, like I said, I can't justify to myself spending that much money, especially when you literally just get the race entry and on-course nutrition for it. There was a t-shirt. The shirt is such bad quality, I would never be out running.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, in the post-event survey, they did ask about the goodie bag that we got. There was none. When you picked up your race gear, you've got your shirt and your bib and a couple of pieces of paper. So there were no tasters, no vouchers, no nothing. And then, after the race, Tarawera does provide you with a punamo, which is a greenstone necklace instead of a medal for the 100-miler, which is something very special, and they would cost a little bit of money to buy. But other than that, there wasn't much I got from the race. You got your medal, which is a special medal, admit that. You got a shirt that's very cheap quality. That's it. On-course nutrition.
So then it comes back down that if you want to run Chamonix, then you have to do that race, right? Then it becomes, that's your the stones that you got, the direct entry that you got, right? That's one of the main benefits. I don't know how you can quantify that in dollars, but clearly if you don't have, if that is your main goal and you don't have to fly even over to Australia, then that's a benefit. But I mean, it's still tough to justify, right?
Yeah. And then just putting it in perspective, coming third at Tarawera. I mean, like I said, I wasn't prepared. I had no clue. But the price I got was pretty ridiculous considering you pay $1,000 to enter the race. It's a multi-million-dollar company behind it. So in case anyone wants to race any of their events for the prize money, I got $100, a mug, and a wooden medal. And a handshake. Let's not forget that. Again, I don't do it for that, but it was just comical because I was kind of thinking in my head, not sure what third gets, but I don't know, $200, $300, a new pair of shoes. Considering they're partnered with Hoka, just, it's not like they don't have any big brands associated with them. Cool, here's $100. That's just about enough for 2/3 of one shoe.
So, sometimes it feels like the worst part of European frugality, because I think in Europe, the whole like swag bag and stuff is probably also not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mind not getting a goodie bag because a lot of the times it's also things that just end up in the rubbish.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's quite comical when you think you enter a 100-mile race by a big company, you come third, and you get that. And there was no recognition of age group winners either. And I mean, I've done local races and placed first in just my age group or came into the top 10 and I got bigger prizes. And especially knowing that they have big other sponsors or corporations that are associated with them. It's like, it would be easy enough to get a pair of Hoka shoes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting perspective. I think that there is a different level of expectation that comes with the big brand, that comes with the global attention, right? I think that there's sort of two pieces there. One is if you want to run, you can forgive a lot of things if it's a local race organization, right? But even running out of water, you couldn't, right? But with a local organization, you would just say, okay, That is logistical ignorance, whatever,
But
immaturity. They don't.
I can guarantee you if it was a local company, they would apologize and it wouldn't happen again. Whereas
Okay.
with UTMB, the fact that I've heard about multiple races now, and sometimes, yeah, it just feels a little different. And also, communication to me is a big one. So I did another event and it was middle of winter, so freezing cold, raining. They didn't manage to get your starting drop back to the finish line in time because the truck broke down. But they were communicating that they were handing out free hot drinks and they were being like super honest about it and apologetic.
Mm-hmm.
Is it very inconvenient when you just finished your race covered in sweat and you were looking forward to warm clothes? Yeah. But again, it was a small organization. You could see they tried everything they could. They sent people with private cars in to get the drop bags. It turned out to be quite messy, but you could see everyone was trying as hard as they could. Whereas with UTMB, a lot of the times it just felt like someone said something, even just feedback before the race about the nutrition, and it's just like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the reaction you got.
Yeah, it's tough too, right? Because it's one thing for you as a runner to not want to run an event like that again or question, if you should. But it's also the volunteers at the aid station who come out there and do this for free, right? Helping out a multinational corporation. If they get a lot of grief for the aid station because folks run out of water, then they also say, why are we doing this? Why am I standing here? Right. I mean, there is a sort of an obvious snowball effect that feels like that you people, what businesses don't go bankrupt slowly, they go fast, right? It's sort of, you don't see anything here, don't see anything, and immediately nothing works anymore, right? I mean, this can turn very quickly, right? This can turn into a complete breakdown in nothing being operational anymore. So that's something that they really need to watch out for, right?
Yeah, and like I said, the running out of water, that was a bit of a like, how could that happen in this race? But then, yeah, inquiring about a different race and hearing that it happened there, you having that experience, that just doesn't sit right. One off, shit happens, you run out of water, not great, but okay. But to hear that it's happened before, it just doesn't sit right with me as a runner, especially knowing that you're doing the long races, you need to provide the water.
Yeah.
If it's a 21K, yes, I think it's reasonable to expect that people don't drink a lot of water or provide their own fuel. But for 100K, 100 miles, people are reliant on aid stations.
Yeah, I mean, especially because that's real. It's a safety thing, and it is a logistical thing that can be solved, right? I mean, you not being happy about your swag bag in a sense, and I'm saying that now a little flippant, right? But that's one thing that is sort of a bonus that you can still question next time you sign up, right?
Oh, and that wouldn't be anything that would stop me from entering the race again. It's more of a bit like I can laugh about it.
Yeah.
Especially, I think for me, part of the laughing too was you ask about it in the survey when you didn't provide it. Come on, guys. So that's one thing where I'm actually quite interested to see if anything comes out of those surveys, because I did answer them as honestly as I could, but trying to provide the feedback as well that can be used.
Yeah.
So, it's not just I rated them a 0 out of 10 and gave no feedback. It's more like, hey, just a thought for next time. So it's going to be interesting to see if anything changes.
Yeah. Especially as the organization continues to grow, especially as the interest in trying to get into Chamonix continues to grow, right? I mean, it's clear that the demand is still there. So there shouldn't be a reason why they're are in a place of desperation, right? They want people to be part of this World Series event. Well, okay. How do we bring this back to a positive finish here? We already talked about you are planning on doing Chamonix, but in 2025 now, which is a bummer to me because I'm going to be in Chamonix this year, and so I'll miss you. I don't know if I'm going to make it next year. Yeah. What is on your plan for the rest of I guess for you, for the rest of the year? Yes. But on the other side, you're heading now into slowly winter. What does the racing calendar look like for you?
So, side note for those that don't know New Zealand, winter here is still fairly mild. So
Okay.
it's kind of, you can run all year round. Yeah, the days are a little shorter and it might rain for the day in winter, but you can be out there running. So I've got one race coming up in Wellington in a month's time. It's a new event, so I've signed up to do the 100K. I do work in a seasonal industry, so depending on how my work is going, I might drop it down to the 50K. Just simply, I don't know if I've got the time or energy to do 100K. But yeah, quite excited about that one. And then I've got one midwinter race, and that's about it. But,
Nice.
yeah, so alongside that, like I said, my work is seasonal in the Apple industry, so things are a little crazy at the moment, and I do teach gym classes, so I'm a Les Mills instructor, so that is currently my focus. So it goes through seasons where, running becomes a bit more and work becomes a bit less, and at the moment the focus is on work. With the gym classes, every 3 months we got new releases, so we're hyping it up, teach some extra classes. So that was last week, so that's been my focus there, and now I'm slowly getting back into trying to get some longer runs in, and otherwise just adventuring around the country. If I see a cool trail, go and run it.
I like it. I see your t-shirt. You ran the Wild last year.
Yeah. Very cool event too.
Very cool event. I want to hear, that's my last question. I've had you on the phone now for a really long time, and I totally appreciate that. But we had, I'm the director of the Trail Running Film Festival, and we had the film festival at the Wild. So I'm familiar with the event because of that. How was that? And how was it different to UTMB? Now that question is too long.
It was absolutely spectacular. So it is different as in you're down in the Southern Alps in Queenstown, so the scenery is stunning. The first half, absolutely not runnable. You're scrambling down a rock face. But it's spectacular. The views were amazing. The weather was great on the day. They did have a weather warning, so the longer race actually got cut a little bit short due to that, because you are out exposed in the elements. So you basically go above the ski field, which kind of tells you enough about it. And yeah, so it was just absolutely stunning. The second half was surprisingly runnable, so I was quite relieved with that, just to, get the second half done with. But yeah, absolutely amazing to me. So I live on the North Island, flying down to the South Island to do the race. It was just special.
Super fantastic. Chrissi, I thank you so much for all your time. If people want to reach out to you, do you want to share any website, social media, or anything like that?
I guess easiest would be Instagram, just my name, Chrissi Faber. I don't think I'm safety conscious, so as far as I know, my profile is all public, and yeah.
Fantastic. Chrissi, thank you so much for coming on Singletrack. Thank you, and congratulations one more time for your third place finish at Tarawera. And I hope I had this like all prepared. I wanted to say, and I see you in Chamonix, but I don't know, perhaps I have to come next year too, so I can actually see you in Chamonix.
Potentially. Maybe one year I'll make it to the US for one of your races, but you're at the moment keeping it kind of local. Still trying to find something cool to do for the second half of the year, but not sure we are what yet.
All right. So if anybody has suggestions, what cool thing Chrissi should do for the second half of the year, reach her on Instagram. Chrissi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissi, for this super fun chat. And thank you, listeners, for joining us after this somewhat extended break here yet again. This is Singletrack, and yes, we are still doing this podcast thing. I see you over on Electric Cable Car for daily trail and mountain news. I'm your host, Matthias Eichler, saying auf Wiedersehen und tschüss.